Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. In today's episode, we are in beautiful New York City. Yes, New York. I'm here for a couple of days and we're going to be exploring a bunch of different areas. Right now, I'm actually standing in Harlem, which is located in Manhattan, which is the upper part of New York. And yeah, as you can tell, there's quite a few different areas in New York, so there's no way that I can visit all the areas, but I'll be showing you guys all the things that I find interesting and that I think that you guys should go and visit when you are in New York. So without any further ado, let's explore. New York, often called New York City to distinguish it from the state of New York, is the most populous city in the United States. With a population of over 8.8 million people distributed over 300.46 square miles, New York City is also the most densely populated major city in the United States. New York City is a global hub of business and commerce and an established safe haven for global investors, and is sometimes described as the capital of the world. New York has architecturally noteworthy buildings in a wide range of styles and from distinct time periods, from the Dutch Colonial in Brooklyn to the modern One World Trade Center, the skyscraper at Ground Zero in Lower Manhattan, and the most expensive office tower in the world by construction cost. New York is really full of secrets, like the house behind me, which is the Morris Jumel House, which was built in 1765, and it was named after a British military, and this was the headquarters during the American Revolution for both sides of the revolution. And what's really cool too about this house is the fact that this is the oldest house in Manhattan. And yes, it is in a secret park. It is kind of secluded, so I think that a lot of people that are even living in New York don't even know about this house. And even looking at it, me being from Europe, I can tell that this place has a lot of European influence. Well, because Harlem and Manhattan used to be the Dutch area of New York. So yeah, this place definitely has a lot of European inspiration to it, and it almost reminds me of my home country of Belgium. And I must say, it's really, really beautiful. Located at 65 Jumel Terrace, the home and grounds were purchased as a museum home in 1903 and declared a National Historic Landmark in 1961. The house was built as a summer villa on a parcel comprising an area of 130 acres. Thus, the Morris property covered some distance from Harlem all the way to the Hudson River. Next to this property, there's a really interesting street called Sylvan Terrace, sometimes erroneously called Sylvan Place, which is a historic grouping of 23-story wood-framed townhouses built in the late 19th century. The buildings are primarily made out of wood and built in the Queen Anne, Romanesque, and Neo-Renaissance styles. Sylvan Place is part of the former East Post Road, which led from the city to Boston. One of the must-see new places in New York is the Little Island, which is a really cool place. It's actually a sort of island, as the name says it, that is going over the Hudson River, and it actually takes place over the old site of Pier 55 that had been deteriorating for quite a few number of years, with the project being estimated between $130 to $160 million to complete. But it is really, really gorgeous. There's a lot of things to do. You can eat here, you can also just come here, have a picnic, but there's also like really beautiful views of the city overlooking pretty much the whole of New York, and it's just really, really cool and a sort of rejuvenation of the city, because if they had just built a pier over the old pier, it would have made the city look older, but now this looks really fancy and modern and artistic, and yeah, it just shows how New York is really modernizing and a really cool place to be at. Little Island was commissioned by businessman Barry Diller and designed by Thomas Heatherwick's company, Heatherwick Studio. It is accessible from two passageways extending across the water from Hudson River Park. The landscape includes 35 tree species and 65 shrub species. One of the lawns, the main lawn, is in the center of the park. Alongside the landscapes, the park contains scenic observation areas as well as the plaza and performance spaces. There's also a 687-seat amphitheater nicknamed the Amph, which is in the western end of Little Island. The ticketed shows are largely free or have low admission fees, and educational programming and performances are scheduled for 6 days a week. here's a really cool place that I found in the middle of the city, which is called the High Line, and it's an elevated park on top of an old railway track that wasn't in use for quite a while. So the place of dismantling it, well, they decided to make a 1.45 mile long park. It's really, really awesome. It's actually mostly a paved path with greenery on the side and a lot of flowers, but they also have quite a few events that happen here. But in a place like New York City, where they don't have a lot of real estate space, well, being able to actually make a park out of a place that they were just going to dismantle, well, it's super golden, and it makes for really a cool place. It's kind of like a secret garden when you walk through it, and obviously for people who live in the city, well, they always need greenery and places to walk in that aren't just congested with cars. So this is a really awesome place, and I really think that if you're ever here in New York, it's a must see, a must visit, just because it's really awkward and different, but also really peaceful. The High Line's success has inspired cities throughout the United States to redevelop obsolete infrastructure as public space. The park became a tourist attraction and spurred real estate development in adjacent neighborhoods, increasing real estate values and prices along the route. By September 2014, the park had nearly 5 million visitors annually, and by 2019, it had 8 million visitors per year. New York is known to have a lot of wealthy people, and with that there's a lot of wealthy and very rich shopping streets, and where I'm standing right here, well, it's Fifth Avenue. This is the most expensive street for shopping here in New York. There's a ton of really big luxury stores. There's also some normal stores too, but it's mostly a street where people will go and buy some luxury stuff. And yeah, it is really interesting to go and see. Even if you're not going to come here and shop, well, there's still a lot of history, there's a lot of really cool buildings and stuff, and it's always nice to also see all the luxury brands. So even though you're not going to come here to buy stuff, it's nice to look at the price tags and kind of dream about them. But who knows, maybe you're wealthy and you want to buy a lot of expensive things. But yeah, Fifth Avenue is really the place to be if you're looking for luxury stuff, and it's kind of like an unmissable thing in New York. Fifth Avenue was originally only a narrower thoroughfare, but the section south of Central Park was widened in 1908. The midtown blocks between 34th and 59th Street were largely a residential area until the turn of the 20th century, when they were developed as commercial areas. The section of Fifth Avenue in the 50s is consistently ranked among the most expensive shopping streets in the world, and the section between 59th and 96th Street across Central Park was nicknamed Millionaire's Row in the early 20th century due to high concentration of mansions there. One of the most interesting buildings on this street is the Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church, which is architecturally and historically famed for its sloping auditorium, its fine acoustics, its old gas brackets, and reflectors. Instrumental in founding Princeton Theological Seminary, Presbyterian Hospital, and many Mission Church, this grand house of God is often called the Cathedral of Presbyterianism. Looking at all of this interesting architecture in New York, well, I found another really cool house, and it's the house behind me, which used to be owned by Alexander Hamilton. And if you've heard the name Hamilton, well, you are right. It is the same Hamilton from the musical Hamilton, which is a really international play and super duper famous. And yes, he was a real person, and this was the only house that he ever owned in his whole life. And he bought it back in the day because, well, he wanted to be able to invite his friends to this house. And he also had a really huge garden around it that he was planning to do as a botanical garden. It never truly happened, but yeah, the original plan was to be able to look at the plants and to enjoy the scenery of this place. And yeah, nowadays it's just a memorial. You're able to go visit it, and it's part of the park. And it kind of looks like a random place here in the middle of New York, but it is a national historic place and really beautiful. And yeah, if you're a fan of Hamilton the musical, well, I think you better go visit it. Now designated as the Hamilton Grange National Memorial, it was moved 500 feet in 2008 from Convent Avenue to the north side of St. Nicholas Park, facing 141st Street. The Grange was considered a country home when it was built in 1802, and its new location is within the boundaries of Hamilton's original 32-acre estate. Like the streets on its eastern and western borders, the park was named after St. Nicholas, the patron saint of Amsterdam, whose likeness adorned one of the ships that brought the first Dutch settlers to New Amsterdam. New York is such a cinematic town. They have filmed so many movies right here, cult movies, indie movies, all kinds of movies. But for me, I remember New York as the town of the Ghostbusters. And yeah, behind me we actually have the Ghostbusters headquarters. It is an actual location right here in New York. It is an active firehouse, but they're pretty cool right here. They have a sign of the Ghostbusters and they have a bunch of memorabilia inside the firehouse, and it is super duper cool. It is an active house, as I did mention, so you do have to be respectful about them. But yeah, when you're here in New York, you actually get to see the Ghostbusters. It's my childhood, and this just makes me so darn happy. Being in NYC, I did want to mention the subway system since it's a big part of the New York City lifestyle. Having opened on October 27, 1904, the New York City subway is one of the world's oldest public transit systems, with 472 stations in operation and stations located throughout the boroughs of Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. The system has operated 24/7 service every day of the year throughout most of its history. By annual ridership, the New York City subway is the busiest rapid transit system in both the Western Hemisphere and the Western world. Times Square. This is the most iconic place for tourists in New York City, and there are so many darn lights right here. It's kind of overwhelming, I must say. And also walking through here, there are just a lot of tourists. I think that this place, for people who live in New York, is not a very enjoyable place. There's just too much chaos, there's just too many things happening. But for tourists, it's really awesome because, well, there's just so many lights to see. There is quite a few places where you can get some food, maybe some stores where they have articles of clothing for tourists, and there are quite a few performers and also a lot of people in costumes. So yeah, if you're a tourist, it is a place to see. It is overwhelming, it is kind of crazy, but it is also kind of fun, or super fun. But yeah, I do like people, so this is really fun for me. Formerly known as Longacre Square, Times Square was renamed in 1904 after the New York Times moved its headquarters to the then newly erected Times Building, now One Times Square. It is the site of the annual New Year's Eve ball drop, which began on December 31st, 1907, and continues to attract over 1 million visitors to Times Square every year. Brightly lit at all hours by numerous billboards and advertisements, as well as businesses offering 24/7 service, Times Square is sometimes referred to as the crossroads of the world, the center of the universe, the heart of the Great White Way, the heart of the world. It is also the hub of the Broadway Theater District and a major center of the world's entertainment industry. New York is such an amazing city. There really are so many things to see, and it's pretty much impossible to show everything in one video. And right here, well, as you guys can see, the sun has set. It's really dark, and I think this is the perfect place to end this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed coming on this visit of New York with me, and if you did enjoy it, please be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave me a comment too, let me know what I missed about New York. It is a big city, and if you guys let me know what I missed, maybe I can come back here, make another video about the city. Well, with that being said, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.